All right. It is 5:35. I think we would like to get started with our evening. Good evening. My name is Emily Hubbard. I am a Senior Park Project Manager for the County of San Diego Department of Parks and Recreation. You may not recognize me from past projects. I'm relatively new to this project, but my predecessors have shared the project history with me, and I am familiar with where we both are now, our plans, and moving forward. Thank you for joining us for an update on the Alpine County Park project. I'd like to start by going over some technical housekeeping tips for tonight's Zoom meeting demonstrated on the screen in front of you here. Your screen may look a little different, so just locate that Q&A feature and then you should be good to go. Because of high attendance and to ensure we have plenty of time for our questions at the end, we have all muted all videos and mics, but you can still communicate with us by posting on the chat feature, and hopefully it'll look something like this or you'll find a Q&A. Your feedback is very valuable to us, so please be patient as we present our information this evening, and then we will respond to as many questions and comments as we can at the end. This session will be recorded and it will be available on our website after the meeting, along with an updated frequently asked questions document based on our commentary tonight and your commentary tonight. And then for those of you that are joining us by mobile device, you can use that same Q&A feature. Your phone may look a little different than this one, but it's still there on the bottom of the screen. All right, the last little bit of housekeeping, I'd like to introduce our team to you. Tonight I have with me Anna Prowett, who's a biologist and environmental planner, Josh Bugel, who's a manager for our region manager for operations, Jessica Geisler, marketing and public outreach manager, Kasia Trojanowska, Chief of Development, Deborah Mosley, Chief of Resource Management, and Joanna Solomon, Chief of Operations. On behalf of our entire team, I'd like to thank you for being here with us and participating in this virtual public meeting. I'd like to go over tonight's agenda. We're going to start with a brief project background, giving you a little bit of history of the project. Then we'll move into park design, talking about our public outreach so far, touch on environmental analysis updates, proposed plans for operations and maintenance, and then next steps for the project, including future opportunities for public involvement. Then we'll spend the second half of the meeting on questions and answers. It's when we want to hear from you. In 2019, the County of San Diego purchased 98 acres of available and developable land to the east of Wrights Field. The largest portion, which is around 70 acres, has been set aside for preserved land, and the remaining about 25 acres are earmarked for active recreation, as approved by the County Board of Supervisors. The decision to purchase this land and establish Alpine's first public park has saved the land from larger housing projects and industrial development. It is now protected as parkland in perpetuity. The goal of the Alpine Park project is to develop a nature-based park that minimizes the impact to the rural settings while providing appropriate recreational activities that both respect and complement it. Here you can see a high-level look at the project site. As you can see, the plans for the active recreation portion are significantly smaller than the surrounding open space, which we are preserving. Active recreation was planned for this specific location because the land is already disturbed and it's the safest and least intrusive access point, which reduces the stress on the local environment. Now I'd like to spend some time in reviewing the previously presented park concept plan with some updates based on your input, site conditions, and budget. Here you can see we're looking down on the active recreation portion of the park property. So this is the master plan that was presented at the last public meeting. In the north part of the site will be the equestrian area with corrals and accommodations for horse trailers, parking with trailer pull-throughs. To the south of the equestrian area and to the main park entrance will be a community garden. We're going to feature approximately 280 linear feet of raised beds. The configuration is a little yet to determine. A compost area, shaded area for classes and gatherings, storage shed for equipment, and water for irrigation. Moving to the west, we will have a volunteer pad on site where a park host will live and assist the park with safety patrol, maintenance, and other special projects. A large children's play area will be located on the west side of the park. The design for the playground has evolved a little bit from the master plan. For the concept plan, we moved the traditional play area away from the parking lot. So we have a larger playground area. This area will have a mix of traditional and nature-based play features. And then moving east of the play area, the park will feature some sports courts. The layout of the courts has been a little bit revised since you see the black and white image here since the concept plan. And this was to accommodate an additional pickleball court based on the increasing popularity of the sport within the Alpine community. Another change is the basketball court was reoriented to north-south so we could accommodate that third pickleball court. The main park buildings will also be to the north of the sports court. They're single-story buildings designed to match the palette of the area with neutral and natural-looking tones. And they'll house a park office, restrooms, and a multi-purpose room that can be booked for small community meetings or gatherings. And adjacent to the main park entrance, the park will have a fully enclosed off-leash dog space for both larger and smaller dogs. We will have decomposed granite that will cover the ground, and picnic tables, shade trees, and a doggy drinking fountain. These are great places for dogs to play freely and openly without the accompanying safety concerns, especially for those pooches without yards of their own. Sports fields and an open grass area will be located in the southern portion of the park. These areas are designed for free play and unprogrammed recreation. Picnic areas with barbecues for large and small gatherings are located along the perimeter of the grass area. Another fun feature is the 6-station DIY exercise course that can be utilized along the walking path and throughout the park. We have heard from families that there is a need for public ball fields in Alpine. This new field will provide opportunities for Little League play, for pickup games, and family outings. And in response to your feedback, the baseball and multi-use fields will be used for team practices and Little League games only, and unstructured play. We will not be hosting tournaments. The layout of this baseball field has also been designed to prevent fly balls from hitting vehicles in the parking lot. It's buffered by a stormwater basin and a landscape mound. Located along the west boundary and south of the playground will be an all-wheel and bike skills area. The all-wheel area provides a safe and non-destructive place for people to ride and fine-tune their skills on scooters, skates, skateboards, and even wheelchairs. The bike skills area will have some of the same features of our other park, Sweetwater Bike Park. However, it's designed on a much smaller scale and appropriate for this area. A few additional things that have changed with the input from the community. We have noted the preservation of existing Engelmann oak trees and modified the site plan to fit that. A significant reduction in the number of proposed trees to reflect the natural environment. And so the park pathways will be of more natural materials like decomposed granite instead of concrete. Many of you have been with us from the very beginning of the park planning process. You've provided a valuable input that has helped us shape the park design. To date, we have hosted 4 public meetings, not including tonight, along with dozens of meetings with local stakeholders and several surveys. We have also opened up the draft environmental impact report for review and feedback. Some of the themes that have surfaced as a result of these encounters have included a desire for legal walking paths, jogging, biking, and horseback trails, safe places to play for people of all ages, interests, and abilities, protection of local habitats and species, fire safety and traffic concerns, and impacts to the surrounding neighborhood. We hear you. We appreciate your feedback and we value your opinions. Your concerns are fair, and we're working with all of our partners to address or remedy them well in advance of the park's phased opening. Tonight's meeting is not to rehash all of this, as that information is available online. But tonight will rather be an opportunity for us to be transparent in where we are in the planning process, share with you some new ways that you can learn about the project and stay involved. So here's a park update. Here's where we are now. We have taken the input and insight gathered from all the community meetings and various ways of gathering that information and adjusted and formalized the park design. We're incorporating feedback from the draft environmental impact report, a significant amount of information that will be shared at a future date. Design of construction documents is underway and slated for completion in the late summer, early fall. Once construction documents are complete, we will put the project out to bid, award the project, and begin construction. We are planning to construct the park in phases, and those phases will depend on funding and construction costs at the time of bid. Funding has been received to construct the first phase, which you can see here in the green, which we're anticipating to include the park entrance, the baseball field, dog park, equestrian staging area, administration building, playgrounds, picnic areas, restroom, volunteer pads, and some of the trails and parking. This could begin as early as spring of next year. Phase 2, and possibly 3, would include the multi-purpose building, sports courts, community garden, all-wheel and bark skills area, fitness stations, multi-purpose grass area, more trails, and additional parking. We anticipate going to the Board of Supervisors in the winter to certify the environmental impact report and receive authority to advertise and award a construction contract. As we move forward, we're presented with new ways to truly customize this park for Alpine residents. Stay tuned for a survey about playground themes, colors, and attractions, as well as programs and activities that park staff could host once the park is open. Now I'd like to invite Anna Proent to provide some resource management updates.
Thank you, Emily. I appreciate it. The county conducted an environmental analysis on the project to ensure that it complies with all applicable environmental regulations. The county released the draft environmental impact report with the associated technical studies on September 30th, 2021, with public review closing on November 15th, 2021. The California Environmental Quality Act analysis included biological, cultural, geotechnical, noise, traffic, and air quality greenhouse gas technical studies, which were then incorporated into the draft environmental impact report analysis. We received approximately 70 public comment letters and are currently working through responses to the individual comments provided within these letters in coordination with our environmental consultants. We understand that in this meeting, you may have a lot of questions on comments some of you may have sent in during the public comment period for the draft environmental impact report public review. And we wanted to assure you that we are working through those currently. As we are still working through how we will address the comments and any possible changes to the draft environmental impact report, or even the project design, we cannot speak to specifics in this meeting. However, we will be updating the frequently asked questions once we work through answering these comments, in addition to publicly posting the responses to the comments. We really appreciate your feedback, and we want to ensure each comment is addressed appropriately and also appreciate your patience while we do so. Some of the species that we have been monitoring and are preserving as part of the project include Engelmann oak, Southern California black walnut, chocolate lily, delicate clarkia, San Diego County viguera, horned lizard, orange-throated whiptail, red diamond rattlesnake, Cooper's hawk, red-shouldered hawk, and western bluebird. Since the original circulation of the draft environmental impact report, we have coordinated with California Department of Fish and Wildlife and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and have made the decision to recirculate a portion of the draft environmental impact report. The main reason for this recirculation is to include western spadefoot toads. We completed surveys in 2022 for western spadefoot toads in order to collect more data and are in the process of analyzing it. We will add the results of these surveys to the draft environmental impact report and will recirculate that portion of the draft environmental impact report this summer to fall, opening it up once again for public comments. Comments from that recirculated draft environmental impact report will be addressed just as they are being addressed now. And once that process is complete, those comments and responses will become part of the final environmental impact report. Through implementation of this project, the county will be preserving approximately 70 acres of open space and creating a resource management plan to protect the connected habitats, plants, wildlife, and land on site. Alpine County Park was designed to allow for contiguous open space from the adjacent preserve, Wrights Field, to the acreage that was purchased by the county in 2019. Wildlife corridors connecting species will not be interrupted. They will be permanently protected to maintain wildlife access to foraging habitat, breeding habitat, and water resources. In addition, through implementation of this project, the county is creating a restoration plan that will further protect species habitats where restoration is needed most. The western spadefoot toad, for example, will be able to flourish through efforts to enhance breeding habitat near Wrights Field within the county land that we plan on preserving through this project. I would like to invite Josh Bugel to talk about operations now. Thank you.
Thanks, Anna. Appreciate it. Now let's jump into some of the operational plans, at least as much as we can share before we have a finished park to manage and maintain. The anticipated hours of operation for the site will be sunrise to sunset. This is consistent with operational hours for other facilities in the county park system. Staff will be assigned to the park to perform the necessary park maintenance, manage recreational activities, and to enforce rules and regulations. A live-on volunteer host will provide additional operational support. Duties can include general maintenance responsibilities, serving as a point of contact when park rangers are unavailable, assisting with any incidents that occur during non-operational hours, and enforcement of DPR rules and regulations throughout the day. And to reiterate what Emily shared earlier, no tournament play will take place on site. We will be managing the sports fields, and they have been designed for smaller group use, like team practices. Any organized sports activities will be vetted through a comprehensive field allocation process. Safety and security are top priorities for the Department of Parks and Recreation, and we have measures in place to ensure this rings true for all park visitors. Gates will be installed at the entrances and will be locked at night to prevent overnight parking and activities. Security lighting will also be installed. Signs will be posted at entrances and throughout the park as appropriate to inform visitors about park hours, rules, and regulations. DPR will maintain its partnerships with first responders and law enforcement personnel. This will aid in addressing and reducing the potential for safety or security issues. The park can also serve as an emergency evacuation shelter site for the community during fire events or other emergency situations. We aim every day to provide enjoyable park experiences and to support a healthy, thriving community. DPR will work with partners and schools to develop programming for the park, including environmental education activities, fitness classes, gardening programs, and volunteer opportunities. The site will also serve as a site to host special community events, like summer movies in the park, your community 4th of July celebration, and other holiday events. Our hope, one that has been realized in other parks and preserves across the region, is that through consistent outreach and recreation opportunities, visitors will develop an appreciation for this special place and natural habitat and assist in the protection and preservation of it. Looking ahead, we plan to host some information sessions to provide residents with a sample of what our staff can provide for you. We will be offering an interpretive early morning hike as well as a sunset stroll later this summer. We will also have some fun, nature-themed read-along sessions at Alpine County Library. If there are any specific things you'd like to see, feel free to let me know or share that information with Emily, and we can discuss it with our park rangers.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, kick it back to Emily.
So let's talk about next steps for the project. Planning, design, and building parks are part of a very complex and long-term process. We've come a long way since our first meeting with you in 2019. Your ideas and input have been valuable in shaping the look, feel, and value of your first public park. This park designed specifically for the community of Alpine. The next steps in this process will be to finalize the environmental impact report, including the new section on the western spadefoot toad, which is in production. We will also be going to the Board of Supervisors to certify that report and obtain the authority to advertise and award a construction contract. From there, we'll work towards obtaining the necessary permits for the project so we can begin construction of phase 1 in spring of 2023, which could be as completed as early as the following summer. Construction of the next phase of the project will be planned pending future resources. This concludes the presentation portion of our evening. And for further project information or additional questions, you may contact me via phone or email. As you can see, my contact information is on the screen. It's also on the project website. Be sure also to check out that project website for updated project information and future events that Josh talked about. Now we'd like to open up for our question and answer. To ensure we get a full account of all questions asked, we'd like to ask you to type them into the Q&A panel. Our host, Jessica Geiser, will lead this section to ensure we don't miss anything. Jessica?
Hi there. Thanks so much, Emily. Good evening to all of our attendees. We're so happy to have you here with us. Thanks again for that lead-in. We are pulling questions from the Q&A panel on the site, so please make sure to post there. That also helps us to track everything that comes through. So if for some reason we're unable to answer a question or we run out of time, this way we can ensure that all of the questions and comments that are in here are addressed in that follow-up FAQ document. So I'm going to start with something kind of fun. It goes back to operations, which is what Josh was just speaking of, and we have a comment about community gardens. Dr. Christiana Silva is asking, who is maintaining the garden, who has access to the gardens, and are the rules for the garden already developed? And that is a wonderful question. I'll hand over to Josh in just a sec, but I wanted to let you know we do have quite a few community gardens spread throughout the county park system, and all of them are operated just a little bit different. Some are managed by park staff, others are managed by third-party organizations. And so when this project is complete, I imagine we'll look at the specific operational plan for that garden, but I will hand it over to Josh to see if I missed anything.
Yeah, thanks, Jessica. You pretty much hit that right on the head. The county DPR, Department of Parks and Rec, has both types of community gardens that are maintained and operated by ourselves internally. And we also have community gardens that are maintained by a third-party operator. One that comes to mind that has done a great job in the Tijuana River Valley, as well as the Sweetwater, the brand new Sweetwater community garden, is the Resource Conservation District. So it's a little too early to decide how we're going to manage this garden. Once we get closer to the end of construction, we will determine whether or not this garden would be maintained in-house by Department of Parks and Rec, or if we would go for a third-party operator like the Resource Conservation District. Either way, community members would have absolute opportunity to have garden plots in the community garden.
Great, thanks, Josh. And I have another garden question, so I figure while you're here, I'll pull you back in. Peggy's asking or saying that she would like to see a community garden change to a butterfly garden, which could be a better use of water. That is a wonderful comment. I know that a lot of the vegetation that's being planted on site in the developed areas will be drought tolerant and I imagine very pollinator friendly. But I will also leave that to Josh. Actually, this might be a better question for Emily since it is related to the design of that community garden.
Thank you, Jessica. I'm so glad that you mentioned the butterfly garden. There actually is in the works and in the plan a garden specifically for pollinator plants. So it'll sit west of the main buildings and east of the playground area. So I'm going to pull up a plan in just a minute and then we can share that. But yes, we definitely, and then as Jessica mentioned, we're going to be using drought tolerant plants and plants that are climate appropriate and specific to the area as well.
Great, thanks so much, Emily. And we had a question earlier on, it came in during the presentation related to what changes did take place since the last meeting. So I know there were some slight changes to that concept plan. Could you just recap real quick what some of those small changes were?
Certainly. Thank you so much. Yeah, some of the changes were just a little shifting here and there of some of the elements, like I touched on the playground. Previously, there was the lawns that separated the nature play from the traditional playground area, and we consolidated that area. We moved the traditional play area away from the parking lot, and then also created like a larger play space so that you can watch all your kids at one time, big and little. Some of the other changes were we significantly reduced the number of trees that we were proposing for the site. There were some comments on, water use and the appropriateness of so many trees, and we're trying to mimic what's out there naturally, so a little bit more sparse. Some of the other changes included making sure that we were buffering the baseball field from the parking lot. The comment about, making sure that fly balls weren't going into the parking lot or hitting people that were walking on the walking paths. And I'd like to actually invite my design team, Mike Peltz, if he could add any other things that I haven't mentioned previously.
Well, no, I think you hit on most of the major topics. I might have missed that the parking lot surfaces are all going to be permeable now. That's a change. At one point, we were thinking that they would be asphalt. And so that is a change that will help with runoff water and stormwater. Aside from that, I think you've covered it.
Thank you, Mike.
All right, thank you to both of you. Jumping back, we had another question that came in during the presentation. This one's from Hector. Hector's asking if the park has been considered to have some of those activities moved to other locations to minimize congestion on site and use areas like a middle school or a proposed high school. That is an excellent question and definitely one that's popped up in multiple conversations that we've had over the past year or so. But it is a good one. And so I just want to kind of reiterate that there currently isn't a public park in Alpine. There are schools, there are fields, there are private properties, but there's not an actual public property that is available to all, regardless of the hours or any previous reservations. So while there are schools in the area, we don't always have access to them, and we were hoping to create something that everybody, all ages, all interests, all abilities, a recreation space where everybody can come together and to play. So great comment. We'll do a better job of kind of addressing this, I think, in the frequently asked questions, but I definitely appreciate you providing that question to us today. All right, let's see here. The next question. Movies in the park. I see something here about that. I should probably explain what that campaign is. So Summer Movies in the Park started a little over a decade ago, and it was a way for people to kind of take back their local park. So it prevents any unsafe behavior after hours at park properties, but they are truly for the local community. So for larger parks, for example, Waterfront, which is on the water and definitely a big tourist attraction, those might be a little busier. All of our inland parks typically get anywhere from 40 to 100 people who come, and they are usually neighbors from right up the street. But we provide a free event for families to come out. So it's a large blow-up screen. We show a rated G, PG, or PG-13 movie. And then we also have some really fun activities beforehand. So the whole family can come out and have a nice picnic on that open green space. It isn't confirmed for the operations plan moving forward, but it's just an idea. And it's certainly something that we would talk to you about first. So as Josh mentioned, we're looking for ideas. What do you guys want to see? What don't you want to see in terms of park programming? We can certainly work that into the agenda because again, this operational plan is going to be based on residents of Alpine. Okay. So Michelle's saying no public park in Alpine. What about the park behind the community center and the library, as well as the park on Tavern Road? I'm not familiar with the park on Tavern Road. I do know that the library has a little bit of open space, but I'm going to hand this one, I think, over to Emily. You might have a little more history on other park spaces that might be on private property or used for different purposes.
Thank you, Jessica. My understanding is that, yes, the library has that a little bit of open space behind it, but there aren't any other county parks in Alpine. And so this would be the first. So we're gonna, actually I'm gonna get back to you on that one. So I want to do a little more investigation because I am not familiar with those areas that you're talking about as well. So
All right,
thank you for your question.
Yes, great question. We will definitely include that in the follow-up FAQs. I appreciate that coming through. All right, Benji has a question here. We mentioned a potential 4th of July celebration happening at the park. Has a fire safe zone been isolated for this, and has a local fire department been involved in this? We have definitely been working with local fire crews, and I'll hand this over to our resource management team in just a second, because that's certainly part of the environmental impact report. But before we go there, I just wanted to let you know that that 4th of July celebration is, again, just an idea. We threw some options out there for you guys to see what you'd like to see in that park, since it's now going to be a central place for congregation for local residents. If you don't want to see a 4th of July celebration there, that certainly doesn't need to happen. So just an idea. But knowing that, I will hand this over to our research management team to talk about the relationship that we have with local fire crews.
Yes, hi everyone. Deb Mosley, Chief of Resource Management. We are definitely coordinating with County Fire and Alpine Fire District regarding not only with our environmental analysis, because we definitely received a lot of comments on our wildfire section of our draft EIR. And so we're ensuring that we're working through and identifying if there's any changes that we need to make in our draft EIR related to wildfire, and that we're addressing all the comments and questions appropriately. And as Jessica mentioned, I think we're mentioning some events for the future, and anything related to any events, we would ensure that if they were done on site, that they are done in a way that are consistent with the environmental analysis. And if it was something like a celebration, that we coordinate with the fire department.
Thanks, Deb. Okay, we have a couple of questions related to potential financial effects on local residents, if there's going to be any increase in property taxes due to the cost of this park. I can share there will not be any impacts to taxes that residents are paying as a result of this park being built, but it does show, or studies do show, that property values tend to increase when a home is in close proximity to a park. So just to reiterate, there are no changes to your property taxes, and right now we're looking at a park with completely free access. At some point in the future, there might be a discussion about adding a $3 parking fee per vehicle, but we also have discount passes and some other things. Again, this is way down the road, and it's going to be something that we can just get to once we look at that operational plan for the park after it's complete. All right. Oh, Peggy, thank you for your comment here. Peggy is saying that that park that is just behind the library belongs to the Alpine Community Center. And then just a reminder that that actually is a nonprofit owner. So that is privately owned. While it might be used now, it is a private property. So if it's booked for a special event or for another need, the general public would not have access to that space. Okay. We have a question from Anne. Why so many activities in one park? This is a small community with outdoor space in their homes. When will we have a live meeting versus Zoom? There are some great questions in there, so I'll kind of break this up. This is a small community. We definitely know the structure of Alpine. It is also important to know that not everybody who lives in Alpine has a backyard or a front yard or a walkable open space to play. Some people are very fortunate to have that, and I understand that's one of the big draws to living out there, is to have that access to open space, but it's just not the same situation for everyone. So when we conducted those public surveys, it was really important to see what everybody wanted access to, and also to make sure that the attractions would fit the current population of Alpine, and make sure that it's, you know, fostering recreation opportunities for generations to come. So, you know, things for kids, for teens, for adults, for older individuals, and also for people of all abilities. So that's why it is a small park. There is a lot built into that space, but it definitely is to reflect the character of all of the residents of Alpine. Okay. Let's see here. So Pat Williams is saying the DEIR does not cite or discuss the fire study for Alpine County Park prepared by Roads Associates. I am not familiar with this, but Pat is asking if we can discuss this. So I'll hand this one back over to Deb Mosley.
Yes, hi, thank you. So Jessica, thank you for that and the question. Yes, so as I mentioned earlier, we are continuing to work with County Fire and Alpine Fire District to address any of the comments and that we received on the draft EIR. At this point, we can't speak to the specifics because we're trying to do a really thorough job to ensure that we're addressing all of the comments and where necessary, making any updates that would be in the recirculated document or in the final EIR. So we're really just trying to be very thorough. So at this time, we can't speak to the specifics about it because we're still trying to work through that so that we can be as thorough as possible. You will receive a notice when the recirculated document is available for public review. And at that point, hopefully everything will be able to answer your questions. But just like when we did public review last time, if you have questions when the document is out, Anna Prowan on my team, she is also on this meeting, she is the lead. You can also call and email her and ask any questions specifically about the EIR. And then Emily Hubbard, who is the overall project manager, and her contact information is on the screen. So apologize that we can't answer the question specifically now, but we really want to make sure that we have the analysis done before we give any more specifics.
All right, thank you so much, Deb. Okay, we have a question here. I love the plans, but how do we know the park won't become another inlet of trash to the rest of Wrights Field? Another great question. This is actually a good one for our operations team. I'd love for Josh to come back on and talk a little bit about park maintenance, the responsibilities of our park rangers and also our volunteer live-on hosts, and then maybe talk a little bit about the relationships that we have with local landowners.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Jessica. So obviously trash is a huge concern in any park, not just one that's close to multiple open space areas, but you know, the way we maintain parks as the county is on a strict routine, daily routine, which includes trash pickup, trash removal. We have park rangers, park maintenance workers, live-on volunteers, as well as we also reach out to other community kind of organizations that want to help out. And sometimes it could be, we've also partnered with like court-ordered workers, right, that need to get hours done, community service hours, and we'll give them a pick stick and a bucket and have them picking trash. Like I said, other community-based organizations will come out and want to do a park beautification event. Part of that is getting trash off of the park and out of the surrounding areas as well. So the park boundaries. So we have a very strict schedule that we maintain the park by that includes daily litter picking and trash removal. So we do have a plan for that.
Awesome. Thanks, Josh. All right. And I'd love for Emily to come back on here. We have a comment about the lawn. I know we've got some different turfs that we're exploring for this, and I know that there's talk of a smart irrigation system, but can you share some info on how those lawns are going to be created and maintained?
Definitely. Thank you, Jessica. So the The baseball field right now is anticipated to be artificial turf. So we won't be doing any irrigation there other than just for wash down, making sure it's clean. The large open grass areas will be served by, like Jessica said, a smart irrigation system. We use weather-based systems. We use various methods to make sure that we're not overwatering, not underwatering. We will use large rotors to make sure that we're covering those large areas. And everything, irrigation is so efficient these days, which is really helpful. We're working really closely with the water district to make sure that we're staying within our water budget. And it has been designed for the topmost efficiency. And then the turf grass is also what you use. We like to use ones that are appropriate for the area. So there are warm season, cool season grasses, and then we make sure that going into maintenance that we're utilizing the best type of turf grass for that area, and that's appropriate for all the seasons and lower water use.
Perfect, thank you. All right, well, I have you here. I've got a question that's got a few questions inside of it, but I'm going to pull out the development piece. So John is asking what the anticipated lifespan is of the large concrete areas. He references parking, skate park, bike park, planning these items being planned on top of those expansive clay soils that exist on site. So can you share, Emily, what the materials will be of the parking area, the skate park, and the bike park, and any info you have on life of those materials?
Certainly. So it's going to be various different materials. And as we touched on earlier, the parking areas are going to be some sort of pervious surface, so they'll allow for drainage. So it could be gravel or a DG. So we won't have a problem with the expansive soils. The all-wheel park is designed to be concrete, and we have our Geotech here also. I'm gonna tag them for speaking to this a little bit too, is that we take all those into consideration when we're designing the foundations and the concrete mix. I know that's technical, but all of those things go into how we actually build the park itself. So we're looking at the expansive soils, we're looking at the foundation design, we're seeing what's appropriate for the area, and we're making sure that all of that is, we need to maintain a life cycle as long as possible. We don't want to be replacing this in just a couple of years. So from a maintenance standpoint, we're also looking at life cycle things too. But I don't actually have like a definitive answer of, it'll last 15 years or it'll last 50 years. Concrete does expand and contract. So we're taking all those things into consideration through that design. I don't know, Jeff, if you would like to touch on a little bit of the geotech in this area, or if I've kind of covered it.
Oops. I'll just add a little bit. You did cover it, but as you kind of alluded to, we did do a geotechnical study to evaluate what the soil conditions at the site were for in regards to structures and surface improvements. And so there are recommendations to mitigate the effects of the expansive soils beneath such concrete areas, which really quickly involves remedial grading. And the remedial grading options to that is either replacing it with less expansive material to a certain depth beneath those concrete structures, or other options include lime treatment to effectively reduce the expansive nature of those soils. So those have been addressed in the technical study that we did. So thanks.
Great, thank you, Jeff, for that. We also have a question regarding the boulders and the clay soils that exist on site. And I know this is likely part of the environmental impact report that is still in process, but maybe Deb, you could talk about the existing large subsurface boulders that are at this site and how we might be able to sustain them, in addition to the trees that we're going to be adding to the property.
Sorry, Jessica, I don't know if I'm the right person to answer that. So that's either going to have to be Anna or Emily that should answer that. I'm not sure.
Okay, thank you.
Can one of Anna or Emily?
So it's the question is about whether or not the boulders are to remain. I'm sorry, I'm not quite understanding.
Oh yeah, so the plan is to address the heavy clay soils and large subsurface boulders that are at this site. How are you planning to sustain the many new trees that we're proposing for this park in such difficult soil conditions? And then we've received comments too on just the preservation of some of those existing boulders and trees.
I see. Thank you so much for reading. Yes, so we're looking at, when we look at our plant palette for a project, we're always taking these things into consideration. We're lucky enough to have an arborist who actually is part of our county team. We're working very closely with them as we evaluate which trees are appropriate for the area. We take a lot of cues from what's around the site. And so once we finalize that plant palette, we'll be looking to what's existing now to see what survives there and what does well, what thrives. We'll also be replacing some of the soils around each of the tree pits, utilizing really good, rich soil for the best success possible for those trees. And then also our irrigation system to sustain them until they can sustain themselves. Clay is not unusual to all of San Diego County. So this is something that we all encounter in every project we work on. Including my own backyard. So we're very familiar with that, and the design team has taken all those into consideration as we're moving the project forward. My understanding is that we're going to be, preserving as much of the natural environment as we can, and these will become beautiful features within the park itself. It'll really speak to the alpine character, and that's part of the beauty of this area, and we don't want to take away from that.
Thank you, Emily. And it definitely is a beautiful, beautiful area. I was just out there recently, and you're right, it's just a great place to spend an afternoon. Okay, so we have a couple of comments in here related to traffic concerns, and I thought this might be a great time to bring back our resource management team, specifically Anna. She can talk about the traffic study and kind of what happens next and how things are built into that environmental impact report. So Anna, do you want to talk about that?
Definitely, thank you. So the county, as part of the environmental analysis review, we retained a traffic engineer to review the project and provide recommendations in order to minimize any potential traffic issues in and near the park. That was information that will be incorporated into the final design plan. There are many factors that are being taken into consideration, such as safe access, sidewalks, stop signs, traffic lights, and speed limits. There will be two entry points and a frontage road along South Grade Road. The northernmost access point will be across Via Compadres, and a second point of access will be past the bend of South Grade Road near Via Viejas. The park can also be safely accessed through Wrights Field Preserve. DPR is currently coordinating with the Department of Public Works on a long-term plan to provide improved, safe pedestrian access to the park on South Grade Road via trails and pathways. Pathway improvements along South Grade Road will need to be added and prioritized in the DPW capital improvement program for the Alpine community.
All right, thanks, Anna.
Thank you.
Hopefully that answers your questions. I think we had 5 people who had comments and questions about traffic concerns, and those are very real concerns, and we appreciate you voicing them. So if we didn't answer your question, please repost it in the FAQs, and we'll take a look at that. Anna's asking, Anne, I'm sorry, is asking when we're going to have a live meeting. That is a wonderful question. I know we've been doing virtual for quite a while. We're hoping to have some live events soon. I know this summer we're looking at doing some ranger guided activities on site. We're also going to be partnering with the Alpine County Library to host some reading sessions with our staff, and those are open to the community. And when we host those events, we'll have members of all of the teams who are part of this project, so you can certainly have those one-on-one conversations. Once those events are finalized and dates are locked in, we will advertise them on our website, sdparks.org. We also will create flyers that we'll have available in public spaces. So for sure the library, and I imagine we're going to reach out to the rest of our partners in Alpine to see if they can post them there too. And if you follow us on social media, same thing, that invitation will be there. These activities would be open to all. And typically when we host activities like this, it really is just kind of residents who live in the area. So it's a great time for you guys to kind of come together and have those real meaningful conversations with us. With regard to future public meetings and hosting live, I know that there are still some safety concerns related to that, so we'll have to regroup with the team. Tonight's meeting was just really to provide you with a quick update of where we are, because it's been some time since we had a meeting. And I imagine the next one will, be coming up in the future, but when we get to it, we'll be able to explore what our options are with regard to personal safety. Okay, Victoria has a question here, and this one goes to Josh. What will the hours be of the park, and what are the plans for homeless management?
Yeah, good question. Like we stated earlier, the hours of the park will be from sunrise to sunset. And homelessness is not a new issue for county parks. We've dealt with that in some of our other regions. And so we are well aware with issues that could arise and how to mitigate for those, and also how to reach out and get help from other agencies, county agencies in particular, Health and Human Services, county sheriff, public health nurses, and even community resources as well. In this instance, we will be locking gates at night. There is a county ordinance that there is no sleeping in a county park overnight, unless it's a campground, right? Which this is not. This is not a campground. So that is against ordinance. We will have rangers, maintenance workers on duty all day long. And then once the gate closes at night, we will have our Live On volunteer that does do frequent patrols. So even after the gate is closed, the Live On volunteer might come out a couple of times during the night to check on the park. If there's any sort of any sort of disturbances they hear at night, they come out and they check on that. Also, our rangers are on call, even overnight, our supervising and senior park rangers. So if something happens overnight, some sort of disturbance, and it's something that they need to come out, then we will hop out of bed at 2 in the morning and come out and deal with the disturbance, as well as get local law enforcement involved to help with those sorts of situations too. So we do have a plan to help mitigate that type of situation, but we don't anticipate that will be an issue with this park.
Thanks, Josh. And I think that's a great response. I think it's important to reiterate that we'll have park rangers patrolling the area. We're going to have our Live On volunteer host. We usually have a great team of volunteers who also help us to manage the sites that we oversee. So there's typically always a parks person there to kind of help mitigate any situation. But we also rely on the public. So we always ask, if you see something, please say something. We post the phone numbers in the park kiosk sign, so you know kind of who to contact and when they're available. In emergencies, of course, you always call 911. But we rely on you. This is your park, and if there's something that seems disturbing or doesn't seem safe, we would love for you to flag that so we can address it as soon as possible. All right, so we still are going through quite a bit of questions. I just want to apologize to everybody. I know some of you have been waiting for a while to get your question responded to. We're getting through, and we just have quite a few. But I do have one here. This is from Michael. Michael is asking about senior activities and walkways, noting that youth will typically be in school during the day, so that park might have a lot of opportunities for seniors. So maybe Josh, since you're still here, could you talk about the types of activities that we've hosted at other parks that are related specifically to an older population?
Yeah, so we can, definitely programming. We want to hear from the community. That's a thing that can always be changing, right? Like, we're not set in we had some comments in the Q&A earlier about movies in the park and 4th of July celebration. If those are not programs that the community of Alpine wants to see, then we're not going to implement them in the park. And so the same goes for our educational, our outreach, our interpretive programming, and things of that sort too. So if we're going to ask the community what they want to see in terms of programming. If it's more senior programs, then that's something we can do. So for example, a neighboring park right down the freeway from you guys, Lindo Lake Park, 2 or 3 times a week, They have a senior Tai Chi class that meets outdoors underneath the boathouse in the park, and it's an extremely popular program. You know, if that's something you want to see in Alpine, that's something that we can easily implement. Things like that are what we want to hear feedback from you guys from, and we can incorporate that into our programming model. It's like I said, that's something that is ever changing, right? Like events don't have to, or events or programs don't have to be stuck in a rotation where they happen every week and every month. And we always want to be circulating in new things and giving the community programs and events that they want to see. So if it's more senior-based events that you are interested in, then we can tailor some of our programming that way for sure.
Great, Josh, thank you. We had a comment on here regarding attendance and questions, so I just wanted to answer that one real quick. The first part of the question was, how many people are in attendance right now? We had at one point 73 people. There may have been more. I wasn't looking at that participant pane, but I know our team has been. So that will be in our recap of tonight's meeting for sure. And then the other comment was whether or not we're going to be posting questions from tonight. Yes, absolutely. Every one of the questions that are here and the comments will be addressed in that FAQ. Also, there's going to be a recording of this meeting posted to our website in just a few days. So if you want to stay tuned to sdparks.org, this recording will be there in addition to any other supplemental materials. Okay, this question I believe is for Emily, and the question is, let's see here. Sorry, I lost track real quick. Oh, it's a question about pickleball courts. So I know the design has changed slightly to add that additional pickleball court. And I also know that our feedback comes from multiple places. So we get the comments during these meetings, we get them through surveys, we get emails and phone calls, and we also have quite a few meetings with the local community and with various groups. But maybe Emily, you can talk more about the addition of that third pickleball court.
Thank you, Jessica. From the concept plan, we were originally showing, I believe, 2 courts, and the sport court area was redesigned so that we could also add in tennis courts and a combination tennis and pickleball. So what we're currently showing is a basketball court on the east, and then if we'll have 2 multi-purpose, so tennis, combination, pickleball, and then 1 pickleball in the middle. And that's to accommodate, you know, a variety of players. Pickleball is very popular right now, but there's still a lot of us that really like to enjoy tennis as well. So we have the opportunity to program the space based on the user group and the popularity, and maybe that evolves in the future. Maybe it becomes, you know, all pickleball or 1 tennis. So we want to make sure that we're providing, like Jessica had touched on, you know, the current trends and what we're seeing right now is very popular, but also like thinking towards the future as well and seeing how we can program those spaces that will accommodate all those uses.
All right, thank you. And I have you here, so I'm going to ask you another question, Emily. Chris has a really interesting question here. Are there any concerns about microplastics from the artificial turf getting into the environment and causing issues? I'm curious about this too. What are how do we manage those artificial elements in our natural environment?
That is a really great question. And actually, I'm going to rely a little bit on our operations teams as well. This is something that we've been looking into, you know, kind of since the inception of artificial turf. It's gone through several iterations of what is the best absorption material for the impact and that sort of thing. And if Josh wouldn't mind jumping in here too to discuss what we're moving forward into, I know that we're revamping some of our fields to use less plastic. So, and more sand infill. But Josh, would you mind touching on that a little bit as well?
Yeah, I'm definitely not an expert in this sense, but I will say that when we do implement artificial turf like this, those are things that we take into consideration, right? The use of plastic and the amount and how, you know, is there any runoff, right? Or so a big part of that could be, right, stormwater implementation. So let's say there's like a huge a huge like 2-3 day storm comes through and you get a ton of runoff that's coming from the plastic field, right? That can kind of get into our drains. So having a good stormwater implementation plan and having our BMPs up, our best management practices, which are things like putting out straw wattles, the big long pieces of straw that prevent water from going into places we don't want. Also having sandbags, things like that, just to be able to prevent if there is any sort of runoff that could have some, if there were microplastics, that stays more on our site and into our sedimentation basins rather than going into the streets and into the sewers. Again, we try to mitigate for that in the planning process by researching and implementing fields that are not going to give off those sort of things. But in the case that we do have microplastics or something along those lines, we're going to do our best to mitigate, always mitigate any of that getting into our sewer system or the community or along the streets. So we take stormwater very seriously. We are audited every year by not only internally by the Department of Public Works, but also by the California State Water Board. We have stormwater checklists and books that our rangers keep diligently. So these are things that we do think about and that we do have plans for. Emily, I don't know if you have anything else to add, but from an operational standpoint, that's sort of what our plan for those sorts of things.
Thank you so much, Josh. Yeah, we work really closely with our operations partners so that whatever we are implementing at the inception of our facilities, that the life cycle and that the long-term effects are mitigated for, and then also that we're not, causing more issues down the road. The artificial turf is changing every day, and they're getting more and more advanced. So the artificial turf of even a couple of years ago has greatly improved. So we don't see as much of the those particles distributed in our environments. Thank you very much for that really great question.
Yeah, I think that's the first time we got that one. So great stuff there. Well, looking forward to adding that to our FAQ. Okay, Joyce has a comment here, slash question. What are you doing to address pedestrian and bicycle access to the park? And are we going to take private property to improve access on South Grade Road? I don't believe we would ever take private property for this use. But I think we can talk about the first part right now first, and then any of my team members who want to jump in to answer that second part, great. The first part was just what are we going to do to address pedestrian and bicycle access to the park? And I'm imagining this is maybe outside of park hours. So Josh, can you talk about that for, I know we have quite a few properties that are open sunrise to sunset, but there are still properties that you could walk onto. So
Jessica, can you repeat that for me one more time? I'm sorry.
Sure, sorry. All right, what are we doing to address pedestrian and bicycle access to the park? And I'm assuming it's for after hours visitation.
Yeah, and I mean, if the question is general, like how are we addressing pedestrian and bicycle usage, I think that can be answered by someone in the development or RMD division. But in terms of like after hours usage, definitely sunrise to sunset, like we said earlier, again, but also like we were saying, that live on host, once the gate is closed, it is very clear that part of their daily duties is to make sure that people are not entering the park after hours. And again, that is, there's county ordinance, offhand, sheriff deputies will call that as a slang term, they call it in the park after dark. That's an ordinance that people need to follow. So we are diligent about making sure that people are out on time. We will post signage that has, sometimes, obviously, if you think about it, different times of the year, sunset will be at different times, right? It's not always going to be at 5 p.m. It's not always going to be at 8 p.m. So we will post, we have signage that is that is removable and we can alter throughout the year that will tell exactly what time the park is going to close that day for when sunset is. And once those gates are closed and everybody's out, our staff will stay a little bit after gates close usually, and then Live on Volunteer will be in charge of making sure that people are not entering the property after dark. I didn't know if development or RMD wanted to add anything about if this was a traffic concern question rather than just a pedestrian and bicycle usage.
I'm happy to take that one, Josh. Anna had discussed or touched on previously about some plans that are in the works with our partners in Department of Public Works. So there is some discussion and coordination between our two departments to improve the sidewalk and bicycle lanes on South Grade Road as adjacent to our park. Like Jessica said, we wouldn't be taking public land or private land for that. It would be in the right of way that's adjacent to the park property. So it's county owned property already. We're working very closely with them on that. There are not specific plans right now, but as they develop, I'm sure that they'll be coming back to the community, and we'll be coming back to the community as well for more information about what that is. Oops, sorry, that slide. I must have touched it. Does that answer the question, you think, Jessica?
I believe so. For the individual who asked that, please, if we did not answer correctly or we didn't provide you with what you're looking for, just post it in that Q&A and I'll catch it for you. Okay, so we have a number of questions about a landscaping plan, and those are all great questions. So I want to hand this one over to Anna. I believe it's a little too soon to discuss the full landscaping plan, but I'll let her share a little more information with you.
Definitely, I'm happy to do that. So we actually have not created a landscape plan yet. However, the landscape plan will be consistent with the county's water efficient landscape design manual and county regulations related to water conservation and landscaping. Efforts are always made to plant native drought tolerant vegetation where possible.
Thank you, Anna. Okay, then a follow-up question related to biking and pedestrian travel during park hours along South Grade Road. Noted, we understand your concerns. We definitely have heard quite a bit of that. So as they were saying earlier, we're going to work very closely with the Department of Public Works to make sure that access points are safe, and that if there's anything we can do to make them even safer than what's going to be proposed as part of that final park plan, that we take advantage of those opportunities. Okay, I have another access question. This one is from Victoria. Are there plans for there to be access from Olivewood Lane? And I don't know, that might be an Emily question. I'm gonna maybe start with you. And
I'm actually gonna go over to our design team for that. They can discuss a little bit more about park access. Mike, could you jump on that for me?
Sure, happy to. Right now, there's only 2 points of access, vehicular access, that is, and they're both off of South Grade Road. There's no planned access off of any other road. Hope that answered it.
okay, so Mike, if you're still there, I have another related question. This is from the previous question. Joyce is saying there's no berm along South Grade. There's no way to make a sidewalk or safe path without taking private property. Is there any information we can share about that, about what the potential plan is to boost safety? Or maybe this is part of that environmental impact report that we're still in the process of finalizing?
Yeah, thank you. There is a plan, a part of this plan, to add a DG pathway along South Grade to allow access along the road within the park boundary. But I don't know if the question is really asking beyond the park limits through the community to the north and also to the west. Are we going to expand sidewalks or provide any kind of sidewalks as part of the park plan? And right now we don't have that authorization, but I do think it's part of what's been asked of another department in the county to look at that. And I think, Emily, maybe you can help with that, or someone, about if that's in the works or if that's in discussion at this point. But right now, our scope is really focused just on the 25 acres that we're looking at.
And it looks like specifically she's talking about South Grade from Alpine Boulevard to Tavern.
Yeah, and that's well beyond the scope of this project.
Okay. All right. Emily, do you want to?
Yeah, I can jump in there. So there is a greater plan for what's being referred to as the Alpine Loop. So I don't have that information to share with us today, because that is our partner department, but we can meet with them and find out a little bit more about what their plans are. And like I said, our projects are going to be very closely threaded, because they're going to be, it'll be the frontage of the park on the west side. This is the west side of South Grade, and then the north side. So we will make sure that we're working really closely with them, and then be able to come back to the community and share those plans in the future with you. But please know that it is all being very closely threaded between our two departments, and safety is our topmost priority.
All right, thanks, Emily. All right, Hector, I have to apologize. You asked some questions early on, and I think we missed a few of them. So I'm going to get to one of them right now. You're asking if we have information regarding community support for a sports complex, when the overall support from Alpine residents during the meetings was for a middle of the road park. That is a great question. I just want to reiterate that it is not a sports complex. There are sports amenities within an active recreation site, which also includes open space for play, trails, fitness stations, a community garden, a dog park. There are some more active rec areas, for example, that all-wheel park and that DG bike park. But those are just a portion of that entire active recreation space. So I don't know, Emily, can you pull back up that map of the full active rec location? Sorry, guys, we'll go back here real quick. Just so we can kind of see the relation of like where these two, the two sports areas are located on the edge. So the all-wheel park and the skate park there. There is some open lawn, as well as that Little League field. But Emily, do you want to add anything about this overall design and the different amenities and why they were selected?
Sure. So as you can see too, so yes, so Jessica was talking about, there's the open space in the middle, and sometimes it's hard to look in when you're in plan view to understand, what the size and relationship of these spaces are. But yeah, it's not a sports complex. It has sports amenities, but we have, a very small amount of sport courts. We're only proposing one small Little League field. And then these open grass areas in the middle here, even though you see rectangles on them, that's just so that we have an idea of what size shapes could fit in these areas. They're, again, meant for pickup games, meant for, friends and family to go out and play a soccer game or throw the football around, that sort of thing. So it's meant to be a recreation space, but not programmed play necessarily. It could accommodate space for some practices. My kids are very much involved in some of the local parks, and they do practices there, but it is not meant to be, a big sports complex. We also will not have any sport lighting. So the lighting that will be throughout the park is for safety and security. We won't have any large ball field lighting or any of that type of thing. So these won't be used at night either. So we've reiterated the hours of operation are sunrise to sunset. So that type of stuff will not be occurring in this park, not planned for this park.
Great, thank you, Emily. And I also just want to let folks know this is the plan as it is right now. So as we were kind of going through that resource management section about the environmental impact report, we may still see some slight changes to the overall design. we're working through quite a bank of comments and questions and making sure that we respond to everything appropriately and completely. So once we get all of that feedback and we do some additional work with the EAR, specifically looking at that western spadefoot toad area, this could potentially morph again. So this is just what it is right now. It is a little bit different from last time. As you saw, the general footprint will remain the same, but there might be some small alterations within the property. And then Hector, to answer one of your other questions, do we have any data supporting the activities that we've included in this park? We do. We've posted on our website some survey responses. There's also quite a bit of information we received from residents directly. But we'll make sure that on our website, if you type in Alpine in the search, you'll see Alpine County Park. We've got all of the corresponding documents there. So it's all the data up to this point. But we'll make sure that if anything's missing, that it's plugged back in. And if you would like copies of anything, please connect with Emily and we'll see what we can get over to you. Emily, I have a question for you also from Hector regarding funding. Hector is saying he believes that grants have been obtained for each activity. Can you share where the grants originated and what they are for?
That's a great question. We're actually in pursuit of grants for this project. I'm going to be meeting with a grant team on Monday, hopefully to understand if we have the opportunity to get another grant. Currently, the project is funded through County General Fund, and we are always looking for additional opportunities to add funding to the project and to supplement what we've received from the Board of Supervisors. But there is not necessarily a grant for each amenity. That usually goes into one big pot of money for the park that has been designated, and that's what we have right now. So hopefully there'll be some updates on future grants. We're always pursuing those, and we're always writing new grant applications. And if you have information about a grant that you think would be a great fit for this project or any projects in the future, please let us know, because we're always really, really interested in pursuing those.
All right, thanks, Emily. And I know we're focused right now on the active rec park. Maybe we can, Emily, can you scroll back to the one that shows active rec versus the entire open space area that's being preserved? Just to kind of show that relationship there. And I'm sorry, I keep making you scroll back and forth. All right, oh, you had it. One more, I think 2 more slides.
Sorry. There we go.
Close. There we go. Okay. So we've been kind of honing in on that 25-acre active rec park, but you'll see there's quite a bit of additional acreage that's part of this overall land purchase. So you can see those yellow lines there. Those are connecting trails to existing trail systems. We will be reinforcing those trails and making sure that they are safe, that any splinter trails are blocked off so we can actually work to improve the local habitat and make sure that the vegetation and all of the species that thrive in the area are secured. I would like to see if we could talk, Emily, about some of the design features that are helping us to avoid any additional stress that we could be creating for the natural environment, as well as any stress we could be creating for neighbors with regard to noise or potential safety concerns.
Okay, that is a great question. So around the perimeter of the park, we're proposing a landscape mound berm with vegetation to help with the mitigation, exactly what you're talking about, Jessica, from a safety and security standpoint, from a noise standpoint. The most highly active noise parts of the project will be kind of in the center. And so the sound will, lessen as it gets away from those types of activities. Again, to reiterate, we are not proposing to do any tournament play. There'll be no projection of sound, and we're not going to have a sound booth or, that type of announcer's booth or anything. So the noise would be, typical park play here. We're also mitigating through vegetation buffers along the perimeters of the park as well. and making sure that whatever the amenities are, they're compatible with their adjacent use. We have, the parking located on the perimeter along, on just in from South Grade Road, so that we're keeping the activity of the park away from the road. And we're controlling the access at 2 points. So therefore, lessening the impact of people coming in and going in the park. Once they're in, they're in. And then we have because of the way the park has been situated in what is the currently disturbed area, we have this really nice large buffer of natural open space between our property and the adjacent habitats. And I also like to invite Anna a little bit, or Deb, to touch on a little bit of what that preservation looks like. But you can see from this exhibit, we're looking at about 800 feet between what we're proposing in the developed park and where the edge of our property is at the narrowest point. And then it just gets larger from there. So we've got a large open space preserve that will buffer the high use activities from the naturalized areas.
I'd be happy to just provide a little more information. So for the open space, in addition to the project being designed specifically to have contiguous open space from the adjacent preserve rights field, we wanted to ensure that the wildlife corridors were protected, and to be able to permanently protect and maintain wildlife access to foraging habitat, breeding habitat, and water resources. So for example, with the western spadefoot toad and the habitat that we will be creating within the preserve, it will be specifically placed in an area where it will be nearby existing breeding populations on rights field in order to expand the population. So we're currently working to make sure we assess all of the different opportunities that we have within the area that we're preserving, approximately 70 acres, to benefit the species, in addition to other species.
Which is wonderful news. It's always great to balance recreation with efforts to protect and preserve our land and local environment. So it's one of those success stories I'm looking forward to learning more about moving forward. We had a question earlier regarding the placement of the Little League field. And I think Emily covered that, but I just want to pop it back in here in the queue. Have we considered moving the baseball diamond? It's at the center of the park, and it seems to take up a lot of the park space. So Emily, can we talk about why the baseball diamond is where it is?
Sure. I'm actually going to ask Mike to step in. He is our lead designer on the project, and he helped with the layout of this. To iterate as well, the design is not finalized. This is the best fit for the input we have so far. We're also taking into considerations the site constraints. So maybe it's a topography where it best fits with the natural grade of the property, so that we're balancing the site as far as how much we're grading on the site. All those considerations are taken into account when we're locating the features on the site itself. But Mike, if you'd like to touch on that briefly about the layout of specifically the baseball field and maybe the other center fields.
Be happy to. In the course of designing or laying out the park, the baseball field was originally, it was down in the lower left corner of the park, and it was discussed during the workshops and with county staff that it would be better placed nearer the hard court surface area and the admin building and restrooms. So we shifted the baseball field to its current location, and along that way we actually placed it numerous different locations in the park just to see where it would fit best. And the orientation of the baseball field also is important. Generally speaking, you want the home plate to the left field foul pole kind of pointing north, typically on a baseball field. So that was important. And so all of those factors that Emily mentioned and the ones I just went over kind of landed it where it is right now. If it were to move anywhere else on the park site, it would still take up the same amount of acreage. It just wouldn't be in the heart, as you kind of refer to it, of the park. But we've moved it around quite a bit, and this seemed to be the best place for all the parties that were involved in where it should be located. So that's where it sits as of today.
Awesome, thank you. All right, we're running out of time, but I do want to get a couple more questions in here. A good question from Benji: will the 25-acre park be fenced from the rest of the county land? So Emily, do we have a fence coming in?
There have been discussions about fencing the park, and we're still looking into that and what would be the most appropriate materials. We will definitely come back with that in our updates for the project and maybe in the FAQs, but that is definitely something we're still working through.
Great, thank you. And since I have you here, we've gotten some comments just from kind of by passersby and through our social media channels about disturbed land. So can you help define what disturbed land is in an area and why that might be ideal for an active recreation site?
Sure, and I might rely a little bit on my environmental partners to help me out with the technical language, but disturbed land is generally area of a site that has had a previous use or that has been cleared of vegetation. Maybe it's been used for a dirt parking lot. Maybe it was a previous use of some sort. So it's the area that does not contain native or natural vegetation, naturalized vegetation generally, or those types of natural features. It's not habitat rich. It's going to be an area of a site that has had a lot of disturbance. I mean, I'm not sure better words to say than that, but it's the area of the site that would not disturb the habitats or vegetation that we were hoping to preserve, if that makes sense.
I think so. I mean, if Anna wants to say something, she's welcome to jump on here too. But I know for some of the other properties we've looked at, disturbed land is usually area, a spot of land that has had vehicle traffic, foot traffic, equestrian traffic. Like you said, it's not necessarily very natural habitat rich because it's been worn down by human use over time. So those happen to be ideal areas to build because we're not having to affect any of the other neighboring environment that is thriving naturally. So we'll throw that there. Danae has a really good comment in here. Danae is asking about direct feedback. I'm wondering if we can share that with everybody. Really, really good question. So for confidentiality reasons, we can't share specific letters that we received, but we do try our best to summarize that input that we get directly through those conversations, those letters, those emails, and include those on our recaps. I also want to share that for this meeting, we definitely send our invitation to a wider group of people. Previously, we sent those invitations to people who lived in the immediate vicinity of this park. And this time we actually send those invitations to everybody in Alpine. So while some of the conversations that we've had to date have kind of leaned one direction, it certainly isn't representative of the larger Alpine community. And that's why we really wanted to have the meeting today, was to make sure that those individuals had a chance to chime in, to get information about where we've been, and to be a part of that overall conversation for this park. So we will go back through the information that we have posted and see what we can clean up and what we can add to that. Because we definitely do want to make this process as transparent as possible. And like I said, in full honesty, we want to bring more of the Alpine community to the table. So that was the intention behind this meeting tonight and that broader invitation. But thank you for that request, and we will see what we can do to provide the info to you. Let me see if there's anything else here that's different from what we've been covering. Vic Cooper is asking about a proposal for sewer and water service to the park. I believe it's too soon to answer those questions, and that might also be connected to that environmental impact report. Would this be a question for Deb, or would this be an Emily question?
I think that's us, but Jessica, you pretty much touched on it. So we're still looking at all our utility options and working really closely to understand what the site needs are going to be. And as we work that, we'll develop what those plans are, but it is too soon to be talking about what the final utility plans are going to be.
Great, thank you. Michelle had a follow-up comment to what I just mentioned about the invitations. Great comment. When we did do 2 public meetings that were focused specifically on that all-wheel park and that bike skills park. And that was because those attractions tend to have very specific users. So we wanted to ensure that in the limited space that we had available at this active park, that the things that we were building in those spaces were appropriate to the population that lives in Alpine, and to any other users in the close vicinity who might be interested in visiting those spots. We have much larger all-wheel parks and bike parks in other locations throughout the county, and those are certainly regional draws. We do not anticipate that, based on the size of these amenities here, that would be the same situation. Let's see what else we have here. I don't know if we have anything else that's new. I know we talked about irrigation that's coming up later. I think the rest of the stuff we can capture in the FAQs. We do still have a couple of questions, and these are related to size of the park, location of the park, traffic concerns, of course, and water usage. So please know that these are all part of upcoming communications, upcoming reports, and also upcoming feedback opportunities. We will be sharing the EAR results. We will also have future meetings, and we'll have those in-person meetups with our park staff, so you can answer all of these detailed questions, and we can answer to the best of our ability at this point in time in the planning process. We had a comment about this meeting being scripted. The first part, the presentation, of course, was scripted. We didn't want to leave anything out because it's a lot of information. This Q&A is not scripted. So we have had to kind of hop between different people responding to questions. We all kind of know our specific areas, and we work really closely together, and we rely on each other for specific pieces of information. But the first part of the meeting, we did plan ahead. The second part, we are learning from you, and it's going to help us fine tune those talking points. And I'm sorry that the frequently asked questions moving forward. So I think we are going to need to wrap up now. It's 7 o'clock. I don't want to take you guys too late into the evening. Thank you so much for your time. Please, if we did not respond to your question in the way that you're satisfied, let Emily know. We will do our best to respond to it. And we will continue to work on our communications outlets to ensure transparency and frequent communication with you. So I am going to hand this back over to Emily to close the meeting out, unless anybody else on my team has any more information to share.
Thank you so much, Jessica. And thank you everyone for joining us this evening. We're going to be in touch regarding new feedback opportunities and connection opportunities, as Jessica talked a little bit and Josh touched on, that we've got some events coming up later this summer in which we will actually be able to meet you in person and focus on those conversations, those one-on-one conversations. The meeting tonight has been recorded, and it will be posted to our website in a few days, sdparks.org. So please let me know also if you'd like to be added to our distribution list. We have an email list, we have address lists. We have talked about upcoming survey opportunities. And if you would like to receive, that in paper or an email form instead of going to the website, just let me know. Here's all of my contact information, and I'm available to talk with each and every one of you. Thank you again for having us this evening and joining us on all of your great questions and comments. And have a wonderful evening. We will see you very soon. Good night.